Okay, the only thing I want to mention on the vendor warrant is this isn't the first thing wrong. We had to go back and try to correct something with these charge cards that the departments have. And I know the first time I was even aware that they had the cards with the highway superintendent. We kind of decided that what we needed to do forward is to bring in the receipts and pay off of the receipts and not wait necessarily for the statement.
Yes.
I know that
Because you can use a receipt.
if you can, you will. I mean, it's not any different than anybody at their home. So I think that's just a policy we have to make with everybody that has a card, is they should bring the receipts in immediately so they don't get misplaced.
Would you still have to bring the statement?
Oh, the statement comes here anyway.
Oh, okay.
The statement comes here, and then you're trying to match up the, well, the highway superintendent, somebody has, Lynn has one. Like having keys to the castle.
Police have one,
Police have one.
fire has one,
Fire has
and the sewer.
one. And the sewer has one. So I think we just need to tighten that procedure up, because waiting a month, and then if it takes you a week, you could miss the pay period. You know, if you're waiting to match those all up.
How do we tighten it up?
We'll just have to make a procedure and make sure we inform everybody. I mean, we'll have to think it out and work it with the treasurer and the accountant to make sure that it all flows together, but come up with some type of turnover so it's rapid. I know that when I charge something, if I don't give my wife the receipt within a very few hours or even minutes, the chances are that receipt is missing forever. So I understand how that works. That was the only thing I wanted to put on that. All right. We've got Buzz here to go over the town meeting warrant, but my experience is I think it's best that we get these minutes done, because if we put it off, it's easy to not go back to them.
I've got all night.
Can I just compare to what I,
Oh, absolutely.
that I printed from before? 'Cause
Absolutely. I'm going to read them all over before we get to them. I'm looking at the minutes right now of March 17th. used to, oh, you compare. So many people come over to show you. Okay, the draft that we have in front of us for the March 17th minutes. Anybody have any changes, additions? Paulette?
Question. Ron, did you have anything? I don't want to jump the gun if you've got something.
No, I don't have anything.
The paragraph about the budget on the first page, where it says over 5 years. If we're trying to commit to how we're going to pay it, oh, right here, this paragraph.
Yeah.
If we're trying to commit to how we're going to pay it, that was a bit fuzzy. If what we're talking about is they will complete the projects over 5 years. You know what I mean? We got into that. We don't, they're going to elect how we pay it, but we know that's the first 5 years. I wouldn't want anybody misled that that amount over 5 years is to be paid back in that.
No, it says the cost of the high school capital projects is $542,850 over 5 years.
So there's no confusion about paying it in 5 years then? Okay.
Not,
If you don't think so, that's fine. I just
I
asked
don't,
a question.
I don't feel it is. Matter of fact, I kind of left it up in the air how long it's going to be when they were here that night. Remember the worksheet that we have, which is the document that is on the document list,
Right.
talk about a 5-year schedule and a 10-year schedule?
Right. That's why I was asking the question.
It's really not our decision.
It'll come up again when it's time to be paid, whether it's 5 or 10.
Yeah, several times.
Right. It occurred to me in the paragraph about emergency communications, I believe that same evening, Bill Perlman explained to us that after construction, the equipment belongs to FERCog to maintain, and these costs are shared through FERCog. And it
Operating
seemed
costs.
adding
Right?
the maintenance costs, doesn't it? Something of operating. It seemed like we should add that to that. It's kind of an important aspect of that.
So what the addition would be after the project is installed, the maintenance and operating costs will become part of the FERCog budget.
That sounds good.
Any problem with that, Ron?
I'm fine with that.
Anything else?
Yeah. So rather than spewing it off, I propose that the last paragraph before motion on the second page, I wrote it up and elaborated a little because there was a lot discussed for about 20 minutes. So
Which, the very last, before it says you made the motion.
right here, between Lucart and motion.
Okay.
So I'm proposing that paragraph.
think on this draft, I mean, there are some differences. I'm not exactly sure how big they are. I do have a problem with the second sentence because I don't know, my memory may have failed me, but I don't believe you came right out and expressed your concern that the select board had violated the open meeting law by deliberating and voting on the select board town report draft. But you did come and say there's the possibility that someone could complain about it. That is how I remember it being presented.
I did go back and listen, which is where this came from, and I thought I was pretty direct because I didn't want to try to skirt around and say what if and maybe and all of that. But we could add an additional word that may have, as opposed to we had. That would be more comfortable.
Well, I mean, if you want to be detailed in the presentation, I mean, that's the way I remember that discussion, is that your concern was, when you started the discussion, your concern was that somebody could complain about it since it wasn't on the agenda.
And
Not that you would come right out and pointed a finger and said that we had violated the open meeting. I mean, that's a difference with what I would think is a distinction, because what you're putting in the minutes is not, because I can remember that I said, well, they're probably going to complain about something anyway, let's move on.
Well, and I had also sent the email with similar wording, but I may have said may have instead of had. So I'm perfectly willing to change that the select board had violated to may have violated, which would be basically this one as well, you're saying. That it wasn't as specific as has or had, but may have. There's room for speculation that we did. But I know I sent it in the email, because that's why I sent it at 5:30.
Now, nowhere in here does it say in the discussion that we, on the agenda, that we always have that anything not 48 hours anticipated. We did have that discussion that evening too. That I felt that was covered with that line on the agenda. So that probably is another addition if this paragraph is going to be added.
What would you like to add? Where? I'm perfectly willing to add that because you did have that as part of the conversation, I believe, as you say.
Just to let you know
Yes.
that I'm more than fine with the way the minutes address that discussion. I think it's succinct. I think it deals with the fact that Paulette had an issue with it, and I think it should stand the way it is.
Before we go too far down the road.
The reason I did it mostly is there were 3 parts to this, and the third part was the part that had to do with other things we could have included that we maybe still had time to do, like the Boston Post came, that we had voted to have a vice chair. There were any of number of things, but at 11:30 at night, with a quick review, I don't think we had enough time. That was another component. That was like the third component of my concern about bringing it back, so if we could make some additions. So that's why I tried to break it up into the different pieces that I brought up that night. We discussed it for something like 10 to 15 minutes.
None of which was on the agenda. Oh. Well, I think my other addition Well, let's. My other addition would be next to the last sentence, I would suppose, where it says Carter expresses,
Mm-hmm.
okay? That the agenda was satisfied by the item that says 48 hours in advance. You know, the chair, anything that the chair does not anticipate 48 hours in advance, and that the report is not supposed to cover everything that the board covers. But cover everything that the board, that's really not very good sense, is it? It's not supposed to cover everything that the board did.
Change it. Did.
I mean, cover, cover everything the board covered, sounds a little,
You're right.
even the editor and me sees that that's.
Include everything that the board covered?
Yeah, that's all. Ron, you got something to add to this? I mean, those would be the additions on there that I would see.
Yeah, I think we might be running into a little bit of a conflict. I remember Dave DeHert stood up once when I had spoken to what he called the complainant, who was Suzanne Corbett, on an earlier one. This very item is referenced in an open meeting law complaint currently, and I don't feel comfortable with it at all. I think it's more than sufficient the way it is. It's a whole paragraph. So if you guys want to vote for it, go for it. I'd leave it the way it is. Paulette's additions, good catches on a few of them there, and leave the last paragraph the way it is. Those are my comments.
Well, that is a good point. I mean, not being a member of the bar. I mean, we are, this is, there's no other way to state it than this board is tenuous at best right now between all the issues that we have going on. This last paragraph again.
I mean, the last sentence on it, Kohler expresses that the board has too much on its plate to revisit the report, feeling that even if it were revisited, it would not get resolved in any case. I expressly remember saying I thought it was a good, well-written report. I appreciated the fact that you did it. I mean, this is, even this, but I'm fine the way it is. In the interest of expediting this and moving on to the other minutes here, I think it gets to the overall discussion, okay? But I'm willing to borrow your good sense, Tom. If you and Paula want to engage and make something else of it, go for it.
What's the note at the bottom, Paulette? Keep as is.
It
Blue
says
card.
right there. It's right on there now. I just didn't want anybody to think I was trying to eliminate that last sentence that's
Oh,
underneath
okay.
the motion.
So really that note is
It's from the
correct.
motion down, it's the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Ron would like us to include after that sentence that Kohler thinks it's
No.
a well-written report. I have no problem with that.
I don't.
You did speak something to that effect, yes.
Find myself with my feet firmly in midair on this one. I'd like to get some things behind us. And get past some of the awkwardness, if nothing else. If we can make those changes, Paulette, I mean, all it is it goes a little bit more into what the discussion was, slightly more detailed. I think it's a little wordier than it needs to be, but if we can make those changes, right?
I would like to include Ron's comment too that he just made, that he expressed it was a well-written report. I think that's fair. I mean, I was trying to make it more inclusive, and he's pointed out a piece that's not there, so I can push it out.
Would you like that included, Ron?
I think you guys should just work it out.
Yeah. Why don't we add that at the end? Right? How did you word that, Paulette?
I think Ron said it, that he expressed it is a well-written report. Isn't that what you just said a few minutes ago?
It is.
Yeah.
Thank the chair for writing it.
Oh, yes. And thank the chair for writing.
So I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of March 17th with all the amendments, including the replacement of the last paragraph with the amended draft paragraph that Paulette typed up. Is there a second?
Second, yes, I'm sorry. Looking to see if we have another copy.
I almost dropped it.
Sorry.
And go back to something else. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, March 24th.
Mary Lynn, do you need another blank for that paragraph we were just working on? Okay.
Do you have a copy? Do you have a copy? Or did they give you one?
I have on the March 24th minutes, I think at the bottom of page 2, where it says the board has a brief discussion regarding excess overlay. I think we should put in there of approximately $29,000. Any other changes?
Ron?
Yeah, on the last page, is that 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line down on the left, is that filled or filed? Just out of curiosity. It could be either, so I think it was filed. Is that right,
Yeah,
Lynn?
yeah, fine.
And then at the bottom, second to the last on that same paragraph,
Okay.
thanked with an ED
Yeah.
after. Just a couple little things there.
Paulette?
Yeah. Do we need to, on page 2, near, up from the bottom, the second paragraph up, the Ashfield Community Hall would like to hold dances to, do we need to say anything again that it's in conjunction with the town because of the Maya insurance? I mean, they got the application, but it's in conjunction with us, or with the town?
Yeah. It was supposed to be, I mean, they were here under that premise.
And I think we said something about it, but not necessarily in the motion per se, but I was wondering if you needed to include something here, so.
We've certainly discussed it since.
True.
Right. Dances and to support the community hall and the town hall,
That sounds good.
right? The end. Anything else?
Yep, let's see. Do we want to include anything, and I'm making this one a question, but I think we might want to, given that the minutes, I'm at the top of page 2. The minutes of 8/22, we were satisfied because they were old. And I know Ron made a point of telling us that he had reviewed his notes and the audio, and I was wondering, given the age of those, do we want to include something? Because I think I asked Mary if she had listened to the audio, she said yes, to make the minutes. Would we want to elaborate that at all, given if someone looked 2 years down the road, that's not a typo on the 12th, that we knew indeed we were going back in time.
I know you reviewed the minutes last March and April. Did you review those 8/22 minutes by audio also?
Oh, Lord.
I thought Mary and Lynn did the 8/22.
Right, but I thought Ron said he
Well-
was...
When I review them, I usually submit a written report to accompany it. And I don't see one, so give me a second, because I have everything right here.
Because I thought you said something before we voted that you had listened or looked at your notes or something because it was back in time.
Way back in time.
Mhm.
5 months before I arrived on the scene.
No, I don't believe I did on that one, Paulette.
Okay,
But I'm not 100% certain. I have right here in my hand the actual minutes for 8/22. And I just said that they were received on 3/24, accepted 3/00.
Well, see, we had the discussion close to the same time about the meetings going back to March, and there were 2 sets of minutes that were reviewed in that. And I remember you and Mary and Lynn all had time to go through that, or took time to go through that, not had time.
Those are the April meetings.
Right, but that's not this August 22nd.
Yeah. So I can't remember, and I don't see any evidence of it, so I'm wary about it.
We can leave it as is, I just didn't know if we
Yeah.
wanted to add something extra due to the
No,
date.
I just assume it is, because I can't substantiate it one way or the other.
I had something I thought we should add to the last page, the first paragraph, because I think when we continued talking for a little while, we were discussing that there was a conversation about the meter and its readings, and I remember Dell had said that he can give readings to the household at the time, but the numbers aren't logged. And we had a conversation about, should we make a log, and that would have been extra process to do. But people at the Ashfield house were afraid due to the repeated CO alarms from December to March. And the fire department agreed they were not able to control those. They just happened and they had to respond. And for health reasons, it's important to know the levels of CO exposure, which is where we ended in part of that conversation. And that's why there was the concern about the carbon monoxide, repeated calls, December, January, February, March.
Well, they came in to discuss with us the emails they received. And the first sentence says exactly what they came in to discuss, more than anything else. Now, we did talk about, as far as what they use for policies and procedures, is the code book. Remember, Dell had that big, thick book that he uses,
Right. And it doesn't include recording those.
and it doesn't include that.
And I'm wondering if...
So I think what probably should be added is that the fire chief explained that what he did was according to the Massachusetts Fire Code or Emergency Response Code, whatever the title of that book is, we can get that. I think that's what it has to be, is that is what he informed us of, is that is what he uses as his policies and procedures manual. I would think that is what needs to be added.
Well, and then there's the difference between if he comes in, like you explained, if he was in your home and you say, what's that reading, and it's right there, he can tell you. After the fact, anybody else getting it, it's not recorded. And that's kind of the difference that I wanted to point out to go with his manual, that the book he's using doesn't require him to record it. So once it's lost. But it could be important for people to know, depending on their level of exposure, which means we don't have a solution for it, but we have a statement of what happens. And
I'm not-
the skill can come up again, that's all.
Yeah,
I'm a little concerned.
I'm not in any position to question the code or to rewrite the code. He just explained to us what he did and why he did it and what it was according to. So if it's according to that book, I think I think that would be the one sentence that I would maybe add to that discussion, is that the chief explained that he uses and operates according to those codes. And we'll just have to get the title of that book, but I know it was an impressively thick binder.
And I would like to include that basically I spoke up and said out loud for everybody, the people are afraid, which is the underlying cause for the email to begin with in their concern. Now, I didn't say exactly that way, but I did say that the people at the Ashfield house are afraid due to the recurring carbon monoxide alarms and respond accordingly. I didn't say that, I'm saying that right now. But I think we should include something about that, because it was identified that they are afraid. Otherwise, they would...
So where it says at the end, Luke suggests turning these emails into something positive rather than negative.
And you can say, and I pointed out that people at the Ashfield House apartments were afraid, are afraid, due to the repeated CO alarms.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. You, Ron?
I didn't re-listen to the audio. I know that we had a lengthy discussion, and at the end, there were a lot of suggestions put forth, and at the end, Dell said something like, listen, I don't have the staff or the time or effort to document all of this additional stuff, and that, and you asked him a question pointedly, do you follow, what do you follow? And he says, what's required, the code. That's how I remember the subject ending. Everything else in between, I don't remember. So,
Well, I wouldn't doubt that in there was
people were concerned.
mentioning that,
Yeah.
I don't know if you used afraid or concerned, but
I think I said afraid. I'll check.
That's
why you have that wrong.
why don't we just add it now and then you won't have to spend your time going back to check it. Anything else? I'll make a motion to accept the meetings of March 24th, the draft as amended.
A second.
Second? Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
March 31st. The audience will be very pleased to hear that these are very short minutes.
Wait a minute. We may need to amend it. We didn't include mail. That was the evening I passed in the 4 OML, so there's nothing here. And we did it under mail, because you were doing mail and I added on as the last thing.
I think we were actually past mail and ready to adjourn.
Well, it was right before that, yep.
Which meeting
The
31st,
24th.
Didn't you do that at a finance
No,
committee meeting?
24th.
I believe the finance committee was here because
No, they
No,
weren't.
that was
They
ours.
weren't. They weren't. It was
It was just us.
this meeting.
oh, the OMLs, I'm sorry, I didn't get the letter of
And-
resignation.
He
Sorry.
had finished all the other mail, and I think I said I had other mail, and that's when I did the 4 of them. So we need a section for mail and then list the 4 of them at the bottom.
Well, all you gotta do is 8, 9, 10, and 11. All right? I have 4 open meetings.
Right.
And after that last paragraph, but before the document list, just put that Blueheart presented the board with 4 open meeting law complaints.
Complete forms with attachments, because they had more than just the single page, 2 pages.
Very detailed.
Yes.
Accept that amendment?
Well, we've already approved it, so.
So we're revisiting.
Okay, yes, I accept.
You all set with that, Paula?
Yes.
Now let's move on to March 31st.
We need to vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So, again, we're on March 31st, short 7 minutes. Hopefully they'll, oh shit, it's two-sided, this one. All right. Let's take time to review this.
Yes. Did Betty take notes? Was it the 31st?
No,
No?
uh,
April 7th?
I think it was the 7th.
Thank you.
Any additions or corrections?
I didn't get to the bottom.
Ron, did you say anything?
I didn't.
Well, I don't mind being quoted. I'm intrigued because we only quoted me, and clearly the Chair Carter and Vice Chair Kohler had lots to say in the 40-minute conversation about the open meeting law complaints, but you don't seem to be included in there.
Do you have any additions, corrections that you want to add?
Well, Ron was very concerned, if I'm not mistaken, and we could quote him in here, that when Paulette doesn't get her own way, she has her friends write open meeting law complaints. And that's not quoted.
He didn't, to be quite honest, he didn't back anybody into the corner. I mean, you're the one making the point, not really anybody else. I mean, I think that's fine. I think what's in there is fine. I mean, there was a lot of discussion, and we're not going to have these minutes go on and be verbatim, word for word. But it does very clearly, and I would think, actually, in your advantage, it very clearly states your position.
I was
Correct.
looking for an advantage. You had a lot to say too.
Well, I did. I mean, I didn't count how long it was, but I know we spent plenty of time on it, and we had lots of other business to take care of.
I went back and listened to it again to see what we spent that time on.
I make a motion that we accept the drafted minutes March 31st, 2014 as drafted.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed. Good. We got through the minutes. We even got one extra done from what the original plan was. Very good. All right, annual town meeting warrant. Let's move on to what the good moderator's here for.
I don't know about the good part, but
Do you have a new draft for us, Mary?
I do, you have it in your,
It's in my
folders.
packet.
Yep.
Gotcha. And we have the most updated worksheet.
I have this today.
Yes. Sorry. And you have the most updated worksheet. There is a small change on the worksheet and a revision on one number. It was $268. It was the ambulance radio assessment. So put that in, changed it in the warrant and the budget. But we had left some money with the levy limit on the budget. So you'll see the numbers slightly different.
And so when I go to the back page, it looks like we've got it balanced within about $4,200 of the levy limit. We're not over, we're under by about that amount. I mean, from what our guesstimation is, our best the best math and the best minds, we'll still have $417,000 in stabilization, and we'll have almost $67,000 left in free cash. And $42,000 left in Fred Cross, $19,000 in GPI, and $8,700 in the dog fund.
Right.
I know that you and Ted got together and just checked notes and
Went over
modified
everything
that.
again to make sure we have it right. I think we have about 10, left about 10% of the total budget, the combination of free cash and stabilization.
Right. I think I saw Ted's article was like 11.2.
It's 11, right.
All right, you want to start at the top and we'll go through the warrant? Mr. Moderator,
I think that's a great way to do it.
if you want to lead.
Sure. So we'll call the meeting to order at 10 o'clock. Obviously, you guys have been very busy. There's a lot of work on your part. It's going to be a lot of work on our part on the 3rd. So what we customarily do is after starting at 10 o'clock, calling the meeting to order, we're then going to ask if there's any objections to opening the ballots by reading, in essence, the first page. And we'll do that, and probably by the time we're through that, it's going to be well past 10:05, and we'll then read the bylaws and introduce the front table, all of that. I have to get really cranking on Article 2 by 10:15. Now, we've got a nice tradition.
Now on the ballot questions.
Yeah.
Those have to,
Well, I was just looking.
those are all, well, we've got, is that correct?
What's
There's an exemption from 2.5 so-called,
Yes,
but
that's
not,
what the statutory language
right,
is.
even though it's a debt exclusion.
Yes.
Right, so it's exempting it from proposition, yes.
Right, so subsection K, there's an ambiguity here about whether it's I think Donna told you that downstairs we needed 2/3 and upstairs we need a simple majority. Is that what Donna said?
She said 2/3 downstairs and upstairs for the truck.
Simple. Correct, isn't that simple?
This is the discussion we've been having, and I was going to try to get back to her tomorrow. We've been reading this, talked about town clerk, and she thought 2/3 downstairs, majority upstairs for the 2 school items. But
I mean, they're all debt exclusions,
there
We're all
are
dead.
debt exclusions, and
so it would be the same for all 3 of them.
yes, and we need to check a little more. Town clerk and I both thought that it's majority on the ballot downstairs for all 3 debt exclusions and 2/3 vote upstairs.
I was just reading, I was just borrowing Mary's iPad to research it and see if I can refresh my memory. It says, we'll get the answer from Donna, but it says in subsection K here of 5921C, local appropriating authority of any city and town may by 2/3 vote seek voter approval at a regular or special election. I think election is a term, it's quite specific.
So 2/3 vote,
2/3 downstairs, because
The
it's
ballot.
an election, that's what I think.
okay.
That's my reading here, that's my memory, unless anybody has a better memory. But 2/3 downstairs, then at the very end here, it says, provided further that said question shall be deemed approved if a majority of the persons voting thereon shall vote yes. So upstairs, I
Upstairs
think,
is the majority.
is a simple majority. I wish it said simple majority, because 2/3 is majority too, but that's how I
When it's 2/3 on the ballot, it's a simple majority.
remember it.
That's how I remember it.
That's how I see
And
You
it.
think it's just backwards? We'll have it figured out before town
And
meeting.
I've gone back and forth about it today, so I don't trust it.
Last time we had one of these and you were concerned we had done it incorrectly.
I do remember
After
that.
the
I don't
fact,
remember what the right
remember?
answer was.
No, exactly. Well, I'm kind of at the same place, but I remember it had something to do with that very same thing. And I thought when it finished, it was the other way around, that it was the majority by ballot, but I could be wrong.
I'm only, you know what, Donna has to.
You know, that could very well be right, because it seems like we always have to at least do a hand vote.
Well, that was my original impression when I went in and spoke with Mary, but now that I'm looking at the statute, it says, seek voter approval at a regular or special election. I don't think of town meeting as an election. I think of
Downstairs is the election.
at the polls as an election. That's, so Donna has to make this call.
Well,
My
we just
memory
want to
is
make sure we have the answer to that. I know it's one way or the other.
So we'll
Put
decide.
it on the website after.
Right. So here's what I think is as important as ever, and we've got a nice tradition going, that there's got to be an overview before we start doing the money articles. Just sort of run over the warrant and explain, you know, to highlight what we're about to do, so it's sort of table of contents. It shouldn't be within 5 minutes, but usually the chair or, right?
You know, normally you have the select board and then the finance committee, right? You have the finance committee chairman also.
If he'd like. The purpose is for clarity,
Right.
so.
So that, you're really figuring on that between Article 2 and 3.
That's what I think.
Yep.
Before we get to the money articles. Article 2 is just accepting the reports. So, would that be you think? You think you want you and the chair of the finance committee?
I'm willing to do it. There'll only be 2 of us at the front table, so you don't mind if I, take the lead on that.
So what's going to happen at that point?
Well, between 2 and 3, just an overview for the meeting of the budget in general, the highlights.
Would it be worth it to have Ted's Word document that he sent to the papers available out there? It's just that
We did talk about having it available out there along with explanation, items that people can pick up along with explanations of debt exclusion, some material from Malta.
You
But I have
know,
no issues.
Yeah, I can.
But also, Ron was talking about what Ted wrote.
Right.
Yeah, so go out to papers, but then also be available.
I mean, the debt exclusions, we got 3 debt exclusions. And, those have to be touched upon, even though we're going to discuss them later, but know that those are in there. The big driver, of course, is going to be vocational education, right? And the lake dam are the big ones. So there's really those 5 points that drive the budget.
I like the idea of Ted's newspaper article. That's a good one to have.
Yeah, because the newspaper's gonna, he's got it set up to go in the Recorder, the West County, and the Ashfield News, but the Ashfield News will be
Right, but it's nice to have a
coinciding with,
there.
yeah,
If somebody wanted to look at the numbers again and cut it out from one of the papers.
Good idea.
that's fine.
All right, so who's going to move the reports, acting on the reports?
Okay, doesn't that generally come from the floor?
That's fine. Article 3, salary compensation. Who wants to move it?
Oh, I don't know if I was prepared to go through all of that. This finance committee can carry some of the water on this.
Okay. All right,
We'll have it for your copy. I imagine Mary will have that all set for your copy by the time,
okay,
before town meeting, but.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So FinCom for 3?
So what?
Well, I'm saying the finance committee may want to carry some of the water on some of these. We work so closely with them. I think, my personal opinion is, Mary, I feel, should be qualified with a little bit of input from Ted, maybe,
Talk to Ted about they're
to
doing
split this up.
some sewer commissioners and a few others.
It's
will
not
do
like
some.
there's 3 of us at the select board table that are going to be wrestling to make these presentations. There's only going to be 2.
Right, so we'll parcel out the ones that someone else can do. I'll check with the school committee. People.
So there will be talking points.
There will be.
All right.
I mean,
Part of what I wanted to do, I
there
want to
will
make
be-
sure that we move crisply at a town meeting because we have such a full plate, so.
Yeah, and so what I'll start doing tomorrow is making the motion and talking points when I haven't got to it yet. But there I will put a place for finance committee recommendation, and if I tend to get those to
Yeah, meeting
they
next
vote,
week.
yeah. So I'll fill that in, I'll fill in who's making the motion and the motion language, and then maybe a few bullet highlights. I'll also put what's required, the kind of vote when it's 2/3 a majority.
Okay.
When will that be done, Mary? Just out of curiosity.
Let's tomorrow and Thursday.
Okay, you'll send a copy out.
But you won't really have the updated until the finance committee meetings.
Right, so then, I mean, I can send it before then, so you can sort of see where it is and look at your motions, and then I'll send the final one once they've met that has that filled in.
Good, thank you.
When are they meeting?
I believe Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Oh, next week, Tuesday. Oh.
All right, so I guess I put in a call to Warren County. I guess I should tell the superintendent, I should ask the superintendent to be here by 10:30 at the latest, because we should be getting to Article 6 if we have questions for him on the Sanderson stuff by 10:30. We'd like to be moving along, right?
I mean, he normally has a pretty tight schedule, and if things get drawn out in the middle, I mean, I certainly wouldn't have an issue. It depends on what the meeting, but to skip over something to get to that school stuff to go back, you know.
Right.
I'm never sure what time they're expecting him to arrive in Plainfield.
Yeah, well, often we get to, it's, I think 10:30 I'll ask him to be here, and that'll give me plenty of time to figure out when he's going to get to Plainfield.
So Article 4 is just the borrowing. Article 5 is the discussion on the highway truck.
Right.
And then 6, 7, and 8, and 9.
Obviously, we'll make sure Tom is here for Article 5, he always is.
What's that? Article 5, oh yes.
Article 6 and 7, you know, Michael usually sort of answers those questions that have to be answered if the school committee member can't handle them, and he brings his business manager, so we should be okay. What about vocational? How could we carry
Who
on?
moves those articles up? I mean,
Normally the school committee.
oh, really? Okay.
Right.
I should know that, yeah, you're right.
Now, who's going to be carrying the water on the vocational? Because that looks considerably larger than it usually is.
Well, right, I mean, that really is the driver on the whole deal. That's one account with a $220,000 increase roughly. But also in that is, in Article 8, that capital, those two capital accounts both have to do with Mohawk. So the gentleman that has done a tremendous amount of work and has infinite detail on vocational is David Moore.
Right.
Maybe more than one person. if they need
Oh,
to.
yeah, I mean, the discussion can go anywhere it wants, but I don't think David is good.
Actually, while we're here, let's speak about the discussion. You all know the board and bylaws, which I read at the beginning, that were written 200 years ago, that say that no one shall speak more than twice to one matter without leave of the meeting. I'm really going to enforce that. I'm first going to make sure everybody, before somebody speaks a second time, everybody's had a chance to speak once. I think I'm just gonna crack the whip more than usual to make sure that we just move along. I don't wanna cut anybody off,
But it's a reality that there are 36.
there are 36 articles on this one, and we wanna move. And I also, I try not to exercise the judgment, but as the chair of the meeting, if the same territory is being built over and over again, then
Makes
I'm gonna
sense.
point that out and just say, I'm sorry, that's been covered. I don't want to cut you off, but we have to move.
Buzz, I've noticed that some people kind of get around that by follow-up questions, while they have the floor and such. And I just consider that not being too fair to other people waiting, so can you control that at all?
I'll do my best. I think this here is really important. I usually like to err on the side of letting people speak,
Yeah.
but this is a daunting challenge this year. And I think that, I think everybody will want to see it move along. And so obviously, if a question is asked and it wasn't answered, then
Sure.
follow-up is appropriate. But if the follow-up is an argument, then I'm going to rule that out. And I don't said in the beginning that
Thanks.
this is the way we're going to have to do it this year because we have such a weighty warrant. I think people understand. I hope people appreciate it.
And I think if it moves a little faster, you may find people who will stay at the meeting longer.
That's a good point.
People feel that something is getting accomplished.
That's a good point.
Okay.
All right, so,
So Article 10 is just adopting that chapter for animal control. Saying that if you're 70 years old, you don't have to pay for a dog license, but you still have to get one.
I still have to wait.
Who moves that motion?
We're gonna, what Mary said, we're gonna, tomorrow, we'll be sort of-
Parceling them out.
I bet we can get Warren to make that one.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, Article 11, that's to make the caucus a little more flexible, and the way I understand it, it's going to help us work within Mass General laws better
Yep,
for the caucus.
and it's so easy to understand, not later than the 38th day preceding the town election. Piece of cake.
Piece of cake. You can count to 38, you got it made. Article 12 is for a grant that the Energy Committee applied for. We got to have money to say that we're going to support part of a position for an energy manager.
Brian?
So my guess is that somebody from the Energy Committee will probably end up moving that.
Mr. Clark?
Okay.
Yay.
Just a
I
question.
love your enthusiasm.
Number 11, does that get recorded anywhere in the bylaws of the town, that
Yes.
change?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Which means, does that require a 2/3?
It may.
I think that
Don't
requires a
break down
2/3.
this, but
That's a good question.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay, 13.
13,
This is a little hard to understand, the language of this one.
state law saying that you can't have anybody over a certain age serving on the fire department.
However, the deductions from any compensation in Douglas Field shall not be made under Chapter 32 for any service subsequent to his reaching the age of 65 in connection with his service to the town for retirement or pension purposes.
No, I have a question into Rep. Kulik's office. Paul's looking at it. Doug Field does not receive any contributions in any case, but this language is in all the articles I could see, and they didn't know the answer to that question, so they were going to try to find out if we need that language.
Okay.
So I left it in, it will be posted, we can always make a motion to amend if it's not required.
But not understanding that, it obviously opened up the question for me. Doug is getting a retirement for his service. So if we can, the motion should be amended to delete that, if we may.
Right, and that's what they're checking on. They were
Okay.
gonna
If
call.
the state, because the way I understand it, once the town votes it, it has to go to the legislature and they have to approve it.
Right. Right, because it's an age exemption, yeah. That part I get, but it'd be great if we could delete that language, it's confusing language and it's gonna raise a bunch of questions.
That's a good point.
Okay, so, yeah, because I don't want to talk about anything we don't have to talk about. Which brings us to 14. So, in Article 14, I would also like this to be a crisp conversation and not go off into matters we don't have to discuss. So, the question here is whether the town will authorize the select board to discharge the lien on the Ashfield house. Now, do you know who's going to be making that motion?
No, not yet.
Do we need to disclose the money in here?
We need to what?
Well, that'll,
The amount of money, or is
That
that
will-
part of the talking?
that will
points?
come with the discussion.
Okay. All right, so that one too, I want to make sure that we're really just targeting the question.
That's a pretty clear, crisp question.
Yeah, will authorize the select board to discharge the lien.
I mean, a part of that is gonna have to be a discussion of what the lien is and how it came about and where we are at this point. That's all very pertinent to that lien.
Right. And there's a question about the possibility of a small amount of compensation. Robin said something about, did I misunderstand that?
The last I heard, that was from Ted. I mean, that was actually offered when we did the last coordination. If that's still on the table or not, I have no idea at this point.
Okay. So that's another article, I think that should be moderated tightly. Ambulance looks pretty straightforward.
Doug, we're all good with the ambulance association, aren't we? I mean, the ambulance service. Now that I got straightened out on that debt business.
Oh, what is the reserve account, $3,000?
Finance committee, that's the account set up,
Oh,
so the
of course.
finance committee can take care of any overdrafts.
I forget what that is, yeah. Got it. Okay, so the town hall, the $20,000 total from free cash and Red Cross for the steeple. Who's gonna move that?
I'll probably.
Okay, select board member will.
Sometimes it gets a little confusing when we try to take from two accounts.
Right, so this is pretty clear. Okay, and what's confusing here in general government? What we need to highlight, what's exciting and possibly,
Well, we didn't triple the moderator's stipend.
so $1.50.
So that's it. Oh. Really, it's the 2% increases for I mean, this is about the first time when we get to talk about what we're doing for salary adjustments, pay adjustments, right, the 2%. I mean, that's really the big driver in here. Does anybody else remember anything? I mean, insurance is up, it's just basic general government expenses. Town hall expenses look a little different because we put some accounts together. Is that right? Yes.
Right, so information technology expenses might seem like a new line, but it's not. It's really items from
Yes.
other lines originally. We coordinate with them.
So that total, Mary, will hunt with your worksheet. Right now it's 294,075, and This is 293,475?
And that's because the energy manager is in an article of its own. Let me see, is it the energy? Hold on, I think that's what I remember.
I just need to know that, so
Yep,
because
yep.
otherwise I look like...
Yeah, so you'll see on the budget, energy manager for 600 is under general government, but
Okay.
because we need an article to address that in order to indicate that
Thank you.
that will only happen if we get the grant,
Right.
so I didn't want to count it twice.
Thanks.
And wasn't it going to be at 5:05?
600 is what we ended up with. I think 505 was an early number that I had until recently, but it changed 2 meetings ago.
To make it 600? I thought that was just the language for not to exceed. I didn't realize we changed it from 5:05.
That's good, 600.
Okay.
Okay. Pretty clean. Anything exciting or complicated about 19?
Some explanation of the ambulance capital building.
Doug, you and Pat will probably be there, probably Pat will be there anyway, to talk about the building and that situation.
Yep.
I hope both of you are there. We probably won't get to 19 till after lunch. Or we'll be begging for lunch, one or the other.
You're probably right. Okay,
20 in public safety.
Big one here is narrowband emergency communication.
right.
And I think there'll have to be a certain amount of discussion on the police department, where we are with that, how we're trying to save some money and still supply service and that sort of thing. So I think those would be the two accounts in there that would be the, you're aware of that 24,000 buzz is,
Mhm.
is to, for
And
the antenna up in Plainfield.
now, I mean, what I've heard, the finance committee is pretty much in sync with you on public safety, right?
They were as of last week.
Yeah. Okay. How about cultural? Any lightning rods you see there?
I mean, somebody will wonder about the library. Probably be a little discussion, I expect, from Dr. Robinson on, to the town history fund, you know, putting some money in there. I mean, I think that would be an appropriate time to update them on their progress and so forth.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, it looks like it's more volume than content that's going to cause time, right? So far. It looks that way.
I think on 22, there probably won't be a lot of discussion, except that the only thing that I may want to bring up, or somebody may want to bring up, is that this is an operating budget, and we have some issues at the transfer station, DEP type issues that'll have to be addressed, and we'll have to get our ducks in a row to do that, but this, as far as operating, this should carry us just fine.
Do you think
I
that?
think Tommy will probably have, Tom's in charge of that. so.
Yeah. Do you think that if there are such issues, it would come up before the end of this fiscal year?
We wouldn't be in a position to manage them before the end of this fiscal year. I don't know if I'm evading your question, but I don't know if we're even sure what the issues are.
Yeah, I'm wondering how far that discussion would get appropriately go if it was within this fiscal year.
I think it's an appropriate time though, at an annual meeting, to give a little heads up. Myself, I mean,
Heads up is good, I just don't know how long to let the conversation back up.
nobody will want to discuss details that much.
Can you help me out with Article 20? I'm still short, but out of that
20?
one, yeah, out of the 195 comes the 24,000, right, to get us to the worksheet.
It can be hard to compare the worksheet to the warrant directly because sometimes things are split up differently depending on whether or not there's an article, so is that one not?
Well, it comes
Well, you
down,
got,
I'm sorry,
the
go on.
24,000, remember, we're taking from free cash.
Right, so that brings that down to 171,690, and we're still at 169, and just makes sense to try to understand it. Oh, maybe it's the, there's 2450 over in other. What else is coming? 2,450 on the worksheet to the far right under other.
So it's the 1850 for animal control, which is coming out of the revolving dog fund, animal control officer salary, and 600 from expenses are also coming from the revolving dog.
So that works, 169,240, but what's this 2450 over here?
That's the animal control stipend and the animal control expenses will be coming from the dog fund instead of an appropriation.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say you expected the narrow band to come from free cash? Is that
Yes.
what you said? So that's the under transport. Okay, 23. Any hot buttons on 23?
None that I know of.
No, this is exactly the same as last year.
Okay, good. All right, 24.
Human services.
Um,
There's always,
Highway.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped down, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, the $544,000 one.
Well, for sure, that's a big enough number, no one will discuss that.
Yeah.
There'll be a little discussion about more in general highway and more in winter roads. I think we probably want to have some discussion on the equation we used to come up with that.
So we just recently had to pull $72,000 out of free cash in a special. Right?
So we're trying to step ourselves up. What we originally did, Buzz, is the finance committee and the select board, we kind of decided that we'd try to appropriate our 3-year average for expenditures.
Sounds wise.
That was $110,000 roughly, correct? That was $110,000. And so-
Correct, we did halfway there.
And so what we did is we took it to, that didn't work in the budget to be where we wanted to be. So we're figuring that we'll get there in baby steps. Hopefully in 2 years, we'll be able to use that type of equation. Chairman of the Finance Committee's here. Do you have anything to offer while we're talking with the moderator?
You're looking at Article 24.
Yes.
sir.
Recognize that the lake dam maintenance line that says $62,000 will not be done from raise and appropriate. That's going to come from free cash.
That's going to come from free cash.
And so that'll be stated in the motion.
It will.
The motion will break out what's an appropriation, what's free cash, if it's from another fund.
It doesn't have to be specified in the written version of this?
No.
Okay,
Well, it says and/or transfer from available funds.
that's good. Okay.
But I think that lake dam maintenance, that will be a discussion.
Yeah, that's a discussion. Ron, are you gonna,
Yeah, I would speak to that.
I was gonna ask about carrying the water on that. but
Yeah.
This is a bad minute.
Normally, I would do a PowerPoint thing, but I'm going to try to expedite things. I mean, we've had a public hearing on it where they came and spoke to the town. It was well presented, and I'm going to try to do a thumbnail sketch enough to make it clear, and go from there, put it to the floor.
That's great. Yeah, people need information, but they need it. I'm sure you do it crisply.
Yeah. So I will, that and the wall, I will discuss those two things.
I wonder if we had to do something with our website to get it up at the top, to point them, or
To that
somehow
link.
to the link for the presentation for those two things. And then maybe we could also put Ted's letter that's going into the paper on the website. People might know
Mhm.
and read it as well.
Would probably be great, good to do.
But if we put it sort of, I'm sure that they're going to end up with the warrant there, but maybe underneath it could be references
Some
to
links.
links, yeah.
How does that get done?
Last
How
time
does that
Gary
get done?
contacted.
Yeah, we will, I'd send an email to Charlie and ask him to do
That'd be great.
All right.
Ted, there was already discussion. Your letter is going in the Washington Post, the Guardian, CNN.
Herald Tribune, New York Times, I think they're interested.
Not the Times. No.
Fox News Online.
Okay, 25.
25. There's always discussion about the senior center, but
Always.
that,
Right, last year I was unaware that the executive director was coming, which is fine.
She will not be here
she will not be.
Will you be speaking to it?
if questions are asked. I don't have a copy of the warrant. This is a separate article.
Yes, well, yes.
This is just a little dated.
I know what the value is, but I mean, how is it?
25.
I'm not sure who should present that. You want me to move it? Is that what you like?
It doesn't make any difference who moves it as much as it does if there's a question about it.
Right, it's always here to answer questions.
I have no problem with the question. It's actually less. Last year, they can complain all they want. Thank you.
All right, what about employee benefit expenses?
I think what will need some discussion will be the OPEB stabilization, even though it's a small dollar figure, that's a new account that we're trying to set some money aside.
Is that the stabilization account? I mean, does that require a 2/3 vote? Stabilization?
Since we're calling it stabilization, I
Yeah.
don't think that,
money's coming out, not if it's going in.
so,
The money's coming out requires 2/3, not just going in.
I mean, the mechanics of this is to put money aside so when we get hit with these benefits that we haven't budgeted for, that we'll have an account to draw.
Right, like we do, like we try to do with capital. Improvement.
Ted, you wanted to add something?
Well, some towns are taking the approach of setting up sort of OPEB trust funds or something of that sort, of reserve funds. But on the advice of our auditors, it was suggested we have an OPEB stabilization fund with that very notion that if needed in some kind of financial crisis, you could, with a 2/3 vote, take it back out of there.
That's
However,
what
the
we apply.
intent is to kind of accumulate monies with which to address what have now accumulated as quite a substantial unfunded liability in our books. So this is a starting point for that.
Got it.
it doesn't look very substantial, but you put 2,000 in for 20 years, there's
Yeah.
potentially be a lot of money.
Yeah, savings never does look very substantial. Okay, thank you, Bill. Now that makes sense when it comes out. So, I would see, anything else there?
I don't think it should be anything that should surprise anybody. Actually, I think we're a little surprised, I was a little surprised, I don't speak for everybody on how little the increase was on health insurance. Compared to some, I mean, I know it's an estimate, but we haven't been appraised of any huge increases with our plans.
Okay. FERCog?
Pretty straightforward. About $4,000 more than a year ago.
Well, do we have one more year to go on the building inspection program? That, remember we signed for 3 years?
Yeah, I can't recall, but I do remember we
Right.
looked at that contract. I think it was a 3-year contract. Renewable though, right? I don't.
If not, it's gonna come up with,
Who will be here to answer questions? Bill?
Good question.
Or, I mean, out of the 4,000, 3,000 of it's an increase in the accountant and $1,000 for the core assessment. That's what it boils down to. Article 28, right, that's the sewer, that's always pretty straightforward.
We have a who yet?
maybe Nancy will see.
And 29 is sewer also. What are the wording of 29? Should it be just from the sewer enterprise fund or excess revenue in the sewer enterprise fund?
I think it's just the sewer enterprise fund, and I actually, Betty supplied the language on this one, but I believe others are than just the sewer enterprise fund.
I think that's the way it usually reads.
On 29?
Yeah, I think so.
$30 is paying our bills, right?
Right?
If we get it greater, we'll have to pay the debt on it. It has been shipped.
Oh,
Tom, on Article 27, Buzz asked who was going to speak to FERCog. You guys are going faster than I am, so I keep going backwards in time. Mary, you're our rep there, right? And someone needs to know the contract and what the requirements are and so on and so forth. Would you speak to that?
I probably wouldn't speak to it, but I will put some detailed talking points in the...
Because we should be prepared.
I think Buzz looked out and saw Mr. Perlman wave his arm, since he's a delegate to...
But he's not Ashfield's representative.
No, I'm the council's representative.
Right. So, if he would be willing to do that, that'd be great.
I mean, I'll explain if there are any questions, what it's about,
Okay.
but from the council's point of view.
Okay.
I think that would be fine.
Thank you. I didn't see that.
So before we get to 30, you want us to wait?
No,
Catch
go
up?
for it. I'll pull you back.
All right, 31 looks pretty clean to me.
Yeah.
30 or 31?
31.
31.
on
30 is paying the bills, right? 30?
Right, and on 30, I would imagine Mary's gonna have some talking points, but like fire debt for the truck. I think that's the last payment on that, so people might be concerned which of these things are, how long will they be going for when they come on?
I assume what you're talking about, right? Ted, before you got here, it was suggested that the finance committee might want to move some of these articles. So will you be having a conversation with each other about who might move which articles? So I know who's pretty face to look at.
Yeah, I mean, when we met, we talked about, I thought you could either tell me some that the finance committee would move, or I'll put some down, send it to you, and see if that looks right, and then we'll get.
Make sure it's when you approve it.
Right.
Good point.
Consistency is the hub of little minds. Sure, I think that's fine. But I remember some commentary, I think, after last annual town meeting where we were making some amendments. And I think you suggested our moving certain things or amending certain things was not always the appropriate thing to do necessarily. I can't
Yeah,
remember
before the
why.
main motion was even made, you guys were like, then moving to amend them, and
Oh,
before
Out of order.
discussion started, and there was a pattern of that, so
yeah,
I expressed my concern about that,
okay.
but. I mean,
But that doesn't preclude us from moving certain articles.
You're not precluded from doing anything, I was thinking preference,
Okay,
not a prohibition.
To get a motion before an amendment.
that's
Right.
fine.
To have a main motion on the floor before we discuss
Sure.
an amendment, it was just, we never had a chance to really entertain the main motion before there was an amendment.
Okay.
And it was when I was asking for your recommendation, the recommendation came as an amendment.
Okay.
So,
All right. So, let's review these and we'll kind of figure out which ones might be appropriate for the finance committee to initiate by moving or making the motions.
yeah, and you're meeting Tuesday, right?
And then, yes, we are. And then you want a recommendation in addition? That seems redundant, but how would you do that? I move something, explain ourselves, and what's your recommendations of finance committee? For.
Yeah, well, usually what happens is whoever makes a motion asks to speak, and you can say, this is what we think is the right thing to do, we voted this
Okay,
for you too, and whatever.
okay.
Go.
Is the finance committee making motions going to confuse the basic philosophy that this is the select board's warrant and the finance committee is in a position of comment? Because in this town, the select board presents the warrant and the finance committee is a check and balance on it. I don't, personally, I think that having the finance committee move articles might be confusing that definition.
Well, I think that's a good point, and it does make you think about what the precedent might be on doing that, but at the same time, over the last, well, certainly over the last two budgets, the Select Board and Finance Committee, I mean, we've really worked in conjunction. I mean, not that everybody agrees on every single thing, but we've come to some great conclusions on this, and I think this year is probably the fewest, if any, splits on that. Anybody can make it. My feeling is at town meeting that anybody can make a motion on any warrant article. Somebody can beat me out of the blocks from the floor.
And, you know, there's certain things, sewer, where, you know, the sewer commission makes the motions generally, and often the school committee members make the motion. But I don't disagree with what Bill said.
I have to say I agree with Bill, because I hear him speak to this point. Because in the bylaws of the town, it says the role of the finance committee is to make recommendations to the select board with regard to financial matters affecting the town. And I think that even though you could argue we're in agreement, let's say this annual town meeting on each and every one of these articles, it seems appropriate that we not confuse people. This is a select board initiative, which the finance committee recommends on behalf of and supports, but that seems to me to keep us in the place we ought to be. And I think if we initiate motions, the question does begin to arise, well, who's in charge of the budget here?
So these two select board members will be busy that day.
That's right.
We're moving motions.
Oh, we gotta,
Yeah, I think those, I think those are,
They can speak to them.
oh, they'll speak to every one of them.
Right.
And in our cheat sheet, it'll, Ron will move a motion and David Newell will speak to it. And then it'll come back to the select board, how we support it or not. I mean, we don't have to, we can do it in that order, right?
Yeah, it'll get a rhythm to it.
I mean, we'll do our share of lifting by virtue of explaining things that we think we're in agreement on, or if we have any kind of reservations or something, we flag that and kind of talk about it, but in the end, kind of, this is the way we voted. And, we'll do our share.
Sure.
But I do think there's a value in keeping the separation fairly distinct. And we'll check them in.
Okay.
all right,
That makes it easier.
it does, it does.
Maybe the finance committee would like to move the reserve fund.
No, but we'll enthusiastically support it.
All right.
And the increases would be.
The 3,000 per deal.
So 31, that's all set.
That's all set. 32 is easy. As is 33, 34, and then, so 35. What's going to happen with 35? Who's going to speak to 35? I was looking at 35 and thinking about the scope of it, trying to keep it narrow this. So tell me about your conversations and what you anticipate happening on 35.
And may I just interrupt to ask, would you like me to get in touch with representatives from each of the petitions to have them information?
Well, I already got in touch with, in casual conversation this weekend with the two most active on the Article 35.
35 or 36?
35.
35, okay.
35, which was the sidewalk. So, I expect it to be Richard Prey, Nancy Hoff,
They'll make them.
I would expect it to.
So do we
I
move
gave
the
him,
motion?
no, I believe that, I don't believe it's a select board's
It's a
push
petition.
to move a petitioned article.
Okay.
But I did give them a heads up that I thought when they made that motion from our discussions last week, that to appropriate that money from grant program income.
What's not here is what happens when the 5,000 is gone, which we anticipate partway through the winter season, that won't hold.
I think some of these things have to find their own level during the meeting.
So will they have to come up at a special town meeting to get more money for that?
Depends on how it's voted at the end after it's
Yeah, it could
been.
be.
If it had been voted, I mean.
Yeah. And those numbers could change, right? Plus, like,
Going up is a problem.
going up
Things are going up, yeah.
10,000.
But
I think 10,000 doubling the amount is beyond the scope of the printed article.
could the amount be removed? Because the select board is either going to have to work on details of this or have a small group work on it. Could the amount be removed so as to leave it open to work out the details?
To request the select board establish a year-round maintenance policy for our sidewalks, including winter snow removal. Period. Sure, that's within the scope.
I'm just trying to understand where it could go.
I mean, I'll listen to anybody who wants to speak to it, but, maybe if it was, a few $100s more than 5,000, we wouldn't feel so uncomfortable, but doubling it, I think is well beyond the scope of the publisher.
But how do you?
But removing the amount,
But if the amount is removed, then what a working group figured out
Sure.
would be required could be done at that.
sure, if the meeting directed the select board to come up with a policy, that would be appropriate.
Town
But
meeting can do anything they want,
if
they've done
it's
strange
printed
things.
at 5,000,
Published, yeah.
published at 5,000, then I might decide not to come to a meeting to vote against it if I thought it was going to be more than that. And that's the reason for not changing it. But if it's published with no figure, then you have no problem.
To see if the town will vote to request the select board establish a year-round maintenance policy for our sidewalks, including snow removal, is published. Then the amount, I think it could be amended to remove the amount. I'm sure it could be amended to remove the amount. That'd be within the scope.
But then there wouldn't be any money.
Right, it would be
It would just
There'll
unfunded.
be no appropriation made, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, not to be facetious, but it could be the select board policy is not to maintain it.
Well, I understand that, and it could be that it is an intent, but if there's no money, it's not going to happen.
And that's what I was, when I was saying what kind of conversation this is going to be, because, should it be, should there be an ordinance requiring the butters to maintain the tree? That could be a big conversation.
Which is why town council thought that it may be that it would get modified on the floor to be a direction to the select board
To come up with a policy.
to come up with a policy, which may or may not include a bylaw, may or may not include
Right.
the town doing it or some kind of.
I think that's within the scope of this published article.
But this wording is according to what.
Oh, the
policy-
wording is exactly what came in on
what
the
was
petition.
I mean, that's the thing with petitions, right, is you gotta take them the way you get them.
Yeah.
But they can be amended.
It's
on the
interesting
floor.
language too, because it's a vote to request the select board to come up with a policy. Doesn't direct. I just misspoke because I said direct. but it's a request. All right, it'll go where it goes. And now 36, I know Tom knows a little bit about. So 36, Jeffrey Precourt contacted Steve Kulik and Ben Dowling, who's on the Energy Committee, and asked them, shot in the dark, whether they'd be willing to come to our annual town meeting to talk about this issue that a lot of people are concerned about, which is, even though it's not mentioned here, specifically the gas pipeline, it is mentioned, but this goes beyond it. And Jeffrey was surprised when he was told by an aide, Beth Ann, that yes, they're both willing to come, could we do it at 2:30? I think Tom was called and I was called, and I said, you said,
I said I didn't think it was appropriate place for that forum. I had no idea that we'd even be able to get to it at 2:30.
right,
My original thought was to table this, to set it aside, or even recess the meeting and come back to it. I will tell you that the town clerk has some concerns with recessing the town meeting,
oh, she does.
because there's a lot of things that have to get done to certify it and close it, and they want to get all this stuff done well in advance of the new fiscal year beginning. So on my short list is that I would like to talk to Jeffrey and maybe a couple of the other people that are behind this petition to see if they would be willing to just table this if the next select board, certainly my position would be, what I would propose is to find a date in June when we're going to have a special town meeting anyway for end of the year business, and to tell them that we put that same petition article, that same wording on a special town meeting. So when we had done annual town meeting, it's done, and then, but we could find a time when Coolidge and the senator could both come, since they wanted them to be.
They'll be out of session, yeah.
Right? I mean, that,
Yeah.
so, if everybody would agree, and I don't know what,
Well, my thinking was to continue the annual town meeting. Jeffrey wanted to have the conversation and the information sharing with our delegation at the annual town meeting. And, I was not thinking when I said move to suspend it, I said that's one alternative. I think
I wasn't thinking of that either until I was told to think about it.
yeah, no, it makes sense. She does have to certify. Well, she has to certify downstairs. She has to certify upstairs too.
She has to certify upstairs too. So,
That's why I spoke to both Down and McEwick at Rosenberg's municipal conference, and I don't think that either one of them are planning on coming.
Steve Coolidge told me he was planning to come.
Really?
Yeah.
Because Down told me he wasn't. And he was
That's a
talking to
change,
Steve,
because-
so.
Beth Ann said she was speaking for Downey. I didn't speak to Ben. I did speak to Steve, and he said he was planning to come and tell me what the date is. Try to make it a Monday or a Friday. That makes it easier for
that was
me.
the last email I saw.
Yeah.
Well, Monday, Friday, yeah.
You're talking about the Saturday meeting.
I'm talking about the Saturday meeting,
An extension.
the annual town meeting. I don't think that either one of them is planning on showing up.
No, they're not.
Okay.
You're misunderstanding. Yeah. No, I know.
That's
That's what
all
we
I'm
told
saying.
them. They originally were willing to come.
Right.
They said come at 2:30, and we said it's not good for us. We've got too full.
Right. And have you passed over my radios? I didn't hear you mention. Was
Oh.
that one of those slam dunk articles?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm going home.
If we do not end the town meeting on Saturday, and it's moved by whatever means we do,
We
is
suspended
there,
the date.
even when you do that, can you do it with a short notice, like can it be until Sunday, and how would people know? Because if you're not there, you don't know we did that.
That's the problem. Yeah. Yeah. You may do it to whatever date the meeting says. It's suspending to a date certain. But yeah, there wouldn't be much notice. I don't think it'd be appropriate to do it on Sunday because there's worshipers and all that. But
I was just, even Monday would be very quick for most people to know that that had happened and there's some
right.
continuation.
So what I thought was going to come out of this discussion was let's choose a date to suspend to that. And I thought it'd be in early June, but I understand Nancy has to certify the annual town meeting. So I think your proposal is a good one. I think Anna Fessenden, I think, sort of got the language of this. Jim Cutler is very involved in this, and Jeffrey Precourt is the one who really wanted it rather than to be an activist meeting. He wanted it to be a town meeting so that everybody could be informed.
Well, and my position is that if we did it as a special, we'd probably have 3 or 4 really short business articles, and then we could devote the rest of the evening to it.
I think that makes sense.
So I'll inform you, if I can make some headway. I mean,
Great.
the petitioners have to go along with that type of,
Yeah,
and that's Article 36.
well, that'll probably take, I think that's a very long discussion if we have a delegation. So that might make it, and Nancy wants to finish by 5. She wants to finish the annual town meeting by 5, her aspiration is, so that she can go down and wrap up after the polls in time for 6 to get things counted and the like. So that's our target, is 5 o'clock at the latest.
So I guess that's up to Jeff Precourt, right? I mean,
Jeff and Anna.
without their consent, this stays here because it's a petition. I mean, they have the ability to do that.
Well, it's gonna be on there, it's gonna be on the warrant. And it's just trying to get enough people to support tabling it. With the understanding that my position would be to bring it up at a special. A more appropriate time, and at a time when we could make arrangements for whatever political delegation.
So if it's on the warrant, they have to be prepared to move the motion and to speak to it. They have to be prepared.
Or move to
Because,
table it.
but it might not, they might not have enough sway in moving the table, right? At the meeting, who knows?
Let's stop using the word table, because table means put it off forever, but it's to postpone it or to suspend it. So the question should be for a special, for an annual, because I spoke to Jeffrey and I spoke to Jim, I haven't spoken to Anna.
And you think they'd be...
They were quite happy with it. In fact, they were even happier with it because they think that if the delegation could attend and speak to it, people could learn.
Good.
And that there could be a more vibrant discussion than under the weight of a 9-hour meeting. So they were both very happy with that. I don't think that whether it's the annual or a special is going to make a difference. Jeffrey was surprised when I said June, because I was thinking the same thing. It should be the annual or it should be a special. We always have cleanup stuff to deal with. So I think your logic is good logic for me.
But they wouldn't have to make it, my idea is they wouldn't have to make another petition. You know, they would have to get another petition signed with more signatures and all of that. Just,
Yeah.
we know it's business that needs to be taken care of, let's do it.
Yep.
Now, you had mentioned something on the earlier petition, I just want to clarify. A petition can the language be amended on the floor?
Yes.
Okay, so I
Yes.
didn't know if it was locked in by what the petition said, but it can be amended by democracy.
The original motion, I mean, actually, they can make a motion different than
They
what's
have to make
listed.
a motion,
Right.
right?
Okay, thanks.
So it's just like any other article.
Yep,
Just have, they have to make a motion within the scope of what was published.
okay.
And I think that, like the sidewalk one says, if any doesn't, we're act relative there too. So you can't have that in your motion. Right? You have to
Right.
put a period somewhere. So it's the same as any other article. I'm a happy moderator.
What's the last date for us to sign the warrant?
7
That
days,
was today.
7 days prior,
Oh, seven, okay.
14 days prior for
For
a
a
special.
special.
So do we have to have a meeting so we can sign it?
I think we got one prepared. If we're in agreement with what's on here, we can sign this warrant and we're done. That'll
What do you
be,
mean today?
that'll be grand.
Oh, I thought we already said there were some things to be tweaked, so that's why I was asking. My misunderstanding.
Just the actual motions on.
Right, the
dollars
motions and
coming
talking
from where.
points, but not the,
Not the warrant itself.
Do you have an official warrant for us to sign, Mary?
I do,
Go ahead.
okay.
It's on my mind, it's
3 copies.
3 copies. Where are we posting? Post office, town hall?
And 1 to law.
We don't do the South Ashfield Library anymore.
We don't.
No?
We don't have anything in here yet for the 5,000, but we were going to take it on when we approved it anyway, right? That was, yes.
It's not our budget
Right.
necessarily. That's my position. So, everybody can feel so warned and warranted. We'll have it out plenty of time.
I missed one.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was picking them up faster than,
No?
I want to make sure I didn't miss one.
As always, I really appreciate the amount of work that goes into Warren. A lot of work. Good work.
Thank you, Buzz,
I didn't do anything.
for what you
Well, we'll see how it gets passed. See how it gets passed. All right, last thing on our agenda is to discuss our select board resignation that we received last week. I have a question. Since it's so close, May 1st, and election and town meetings on May 3rd, at what hour was the resignation to take effect? Was it at 12 a.m. or what? I mean, when people ask me and they say 48 hours before or 36 hours before, I'd like to be able to give them the right answer.
I presume if it said May 1, then as soon as it's May 2nd,
Okay, well, that's what I'm
that
going
would
to
I
ask.
would assume.
So,
Midnight
yeah, 11:59 p.m.
of the first, yeah.
11:59 p.m. Okay, well, that's clarification.
Didn't know the times.
Well,
We-
Well, we're down to counting hours. I mean, it certainly was lengthy. Probably my second or third thought is that presidential farewell addresses have been shorter, but it is what it is. So, but certainly the first paragraph, even the first sentence, is the meat of it as far as I'm concerned, as far as your date of resignation. I mean, is there a particular reason? I mean, everybody's asking me like I'm supposed to know, and like so many things I don't, for such a short term before the term was going to end. Is there a particular reason? There has to be a reason, but can you share with us what that is for it to only be about 48 hours before the end of the term?
I think it's clear in there, isn't it? I mean, I've got quite a few pages, as you said.
Well, I mean, it's positions. I mean, and it's restating the same sorts of things that actually we've been working through. You know, we've been working around these issues and knowing that they're out there. But that doesn't mean that we haven't at the same time been working. So, you know, just like tonight, right? We worked through the last 3 months, right? We worked through the budget. We worked through getting these articles together. We've worked through that even though you have very distinct issues around very distinct and separate topics. So that still leads me to believe, or ask the question, what is the reason for counting hours? I mean, it's not counting weeks, it's not, certainly not counting months, but to get to the point where we're counting hours.
Oh, I wasn't counting hours.
No,
I picked a day
but
to
every,
make it effective.
certainly everyone else is. I mean, this, you know, the big,
I was running my
this
mind.
may be the big question of the 20th century was who killed, who shot JR, and now we have, what was the reason for this? And if there was a reason that you could share, it certainly would. I think it would help the town have an idea of why this is happening at this time. But if you're not willing to share that, that's or beyond what's in the letter.
I was going to say, it's in the letter.
So, but, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason for the select board to accept it because I think the minute you handed it to the minute the town clerk opened it, it was taken care of. It was your notification. I just, for the life of me, don't understand it. Ron, do you have any comments?
I do. I've prayed on her letter quite a bit, and I've read it and reread it probably 3 or 4 times. And I'm distressed by it. A lot of comments in her letter were very direct and I think unfair. And what I've decided to do is put together a letter of my own thoughts. These are Ron Kohler's thoughts relative to Paulette's letter of resignation. I don't agree with much in her letter, and so I want the record to be clear from my perspective. So I'll hand that out.
So we're clear, the letter of resignation will be a document on this segment. Since we discussed.
Say that again? I don't
The letter of
understand.
resignation, since we're discussing it and since it was on the agenda, this will be part of the document. And now that Ron has passed this out, there's another document to go on the document.
Do we usually have rebuttal letters of resignation?
Well, he asked me what my opinion was, and this is my opinion. Okay? I don't agree with much what went on in your letter of resignation, Paul. And to be very clear, so that I don't misspeak, these are my thoughts. It's not a rebuttal.
Of course it is, Ron.
It's my opinion, Paulette. I'm entitled to. You're 1/3 of a vote, I'm 1/3.
It's a rebuttal to my letter of resignation. It's silly.
Well, Paulette, you know, it all depends on whose ox is being gored. All right, because you may have noticed that I very seldom write anything down. I normally speak it, even though sometimes it may get me into a little bit of a jam. But both of you, to my right and my left, are famous for always having something written down to share, to make your comments, and I say that it's probably because you're more at ease writing it down and having your thoughts clear like that than you are speaking it, which is fine. But now that it's here, it will become part of the right. You have to put it on, just like every time that something gets passed out in a meeting. It's a page and a half. Let me go over it. Personal aggrandizement. it's a sad time. I think this, I would say that every action has an equal but opposite reaction. And that's been the state of affairs here for my tenure, right, which is about 15 months at this point. But like again, I'll say is that what amazes me on the whole resignation and timing so close to the end of a term, and stating that nothing can be done and that nothing can be accomplished because of problems with minutes and that sort of thing is a bit contrary to what we've been doing for the last 15 months. Because we have moved forward on things. We put together 2 budgets. We signed contracts. We have done a lot of things, even working around and working through these issues. And so saying that this letter explains what my reality is unexplainable at this point. But at the same time, as far as I'm concerned, you've resigned. I'm sure that that's the law is that the town, once the town clerk had it, it was official notification. And not that we won't be seeing you again.
It's my letter of resignation. It's, if you want to write your statement about how you feel, how 16 months have gone, and Ron could have written his own statement, what he thought, as opposed to a rebuttal to mine. That's just silly.
It doesn't say on there rebuttal. It doesn't say that on that rebuttal. I mean, being able to write a memo, that is not the first memo that Ron Kohler has written in the last 15 months. It's probably the 8th that I've seen, or 9th for all I know. It's not the first time that you pulled out of your bag an addition, a correction, something that you had gotten your thoughts clear on that you wanted to present to us. So saying that it's wrong would mean everything else has also been wrong.
Disagreeing with my letter of resignation, that is my letter. If somebody wants to really disagree, write their own letter of resignation.
Is there any more
Not just
business?
arguing with mine.
Is there any more business for us tonight?
Let me just take a very quick look. I don't think so. I think all the mail that we've gotten has come in as emails during the week, and no, nothing else.
Question.
I got a point of hot on my mind. The next set of warrants to be signed would be on the 5th. Monday the 5th is also Steve Kulik's having a legislative meeting.
Right, and that looks like a very good one.
I think it's at the Blue Barn. So we may have to do a little scheduling around that.
You could, in the past times when it couldn't be signed at a meeting, or at other times, they can be left in, over the weekend from Friday to Monday or Tuesday, and individual select board members could come in and review them, and Paulette does that. Sometimes either way.
Will you look up and communicate with us? Do we have to make a reservation, and do we have to pay for dinner or some such thing?
No, I don't think there's a cost to it, and I can put in a reservation for the full select board.
Just trying to think ahead at that point.
Yep. And post the meeting for that, or just assume that we will go to that as that meeting. going to be having that.
We'll have to make a decision on
All right, I'd like to do before I
What is cool, is it a legislative breakfast?
it. No, it's not, it's a dinner at night, it's I read the agenda and it escapes me right now. It was actually, wasn't it a Mass Municipal notice that came on that one?
It might be, I do remember reading it and thinking that it seemed like it was going to cover a lot that would be.
Could you forward it to me? I don't seem to recall that.
Yep, I'll do that tonight.
Okay.
Yes.
Two more meetings this week. I know Thursday is the committee you've been working on that's going to be here.
Right.
So I'm assuming you're going to be here. How many of us are available tomorrow night at the school?
I was planning to.
I'm going,
Oh, okay.
and it's posted.
It's
Yes,
posted.
no, I just didn't know, sometimes you're out of town, so I was just checking to see.
I won't be here Thursday.
But that's also posted.
Right. I saw that. Thank you.
All right, any other business? Seeing none, I'll move to adjourn at 9:22. Second. All those in favor say aye.